A kind-hearted teenager from Maine vanished on September 24, 1971, after a routine shopping trip. Her disappearance was initially dismissed by police as a runaway case, leaving her family to search alone. Years later, new leads revealed the 16-year-old had been dating a 22-year-old man and was seen getting into a stolen blue Cadillac with him and another man. Witnesses later recalled seeing the teenage girl crying and fearful while working on a farm using a fake name. She was last seen fleeing naked from a house during a blizzard, never to be seen again. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jolynn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Cathy's story. Cathy was the first of 3 daughters born to Roy and Claire Moulton. She was born on June 28, 1955, in Portland, Maine. Cathy was a quiet and contemplative child who was very trusting of others, though she had few close friends. She had a big heart and liked helping others. Cathy often visited a family friend who was paralyzed, an elderly neighbor, and a friend who was bedridden after a car accident. Cathy believed if you were nice to other people, they would be nice to you. In her free time, Cathy loved to swing, and when she wasn't babysitting or helping out around the house, she attended dances held at the local 7-Eleven club. Just like her father and sisters, Cathy often wrote poetry. At the start of her junior year at Deering High School, Cathy's family had just returned from a 3-month vacation, traveling throughout the United States and Mexico. It was the first time Cathy had traveled extensively outside of Maine. During the trip, Cathy turned 16, and for her birthday, her parents promised her a gift of whatever she saw that she liked. It was in Mexico that Cathy picked out a leather handbag. When she returned from the trip, Cathy was so happy that her good friend commented that she seemed a lot happier than she had in the past. On Friday, September 24, 1971, Cathy rushed home from school and asked her father to give her a ride into town so she could go shopping. She had a run in her pantyhose and wanted a new pair to wear to the YMCA dance happening that evening. Her mother gave her some money and asked her to get 2 tubes of toothpaste while she was out. She also gave Cathy money for the bus ride home. Cathy put the couple of dollars from her mother in her new leather handbag along with her house key and left out the front door with her father. Cathy left behind all of her clothes and the money she made from babysitting. Roy dropped off his daughter on the corner of Cumberland and Forest Avenues at 1:15 p.m. A little after 2 hours of shopping, Cathy stopped by Starbird Music to talk to a classmate, Carol Starbird. She told Carol that she was hurrying home to take a shower before the dance and that as she had spent her bus fare, she would be making the roughly 2-mile walk home. They parted ways, saying they'd see each other that night, and at 5:30 p.m., Cathy stepped out onto Forest Avenue. When Cathy failed to show up by dinner, her mother began to worry. In the Moulton family, there was an agreement that if someone was running late, they would call. At 6:30 p.m., Claire called the police to file a missing persons report. The police laughed at her before telling her that she would have to wait 72 hours before the police would do anything. Cathy's family took matters into their own hands and checked with hospitals and friends. Roy ended up driving to the YMCA dance in case she decided to head there without going home to change, but he couldn't find her. Roy ran into the friend, Carol Starbird, who informed him about seeing Cathy earlier. When Carol didn't see Cathy at the dance, as expected, she assumed that Cathy made a last-minute change in plans. Roy then drove down to the police station where he was explained the facts of life by the desk sergeant. The desk sergeant wore a smirk while he said, "She's been gone, 2 hours? You can't be serious about filing a missing persons report on a girl who is 2 hours overdue." But Roy was persistent, and eventually he was allowed to file a missing persons report. The Portland Police Department saw nearly 200 children a year leaving home and assumed Cathy was just another runaway. This was during the Vietnam War, and thousands of kids were disillusioned with everything happening around them and were drifting more toward the counterculture in search of an escape, especially young men in fear of the draft. The Moultons were largely on their own search for their daughter. Early in November, officials at Deering High School cleaned out Cathy's locker and found a phone number scrawled on a scrap of paper. Theories began to swirl, but the phone number rang a phone at the Moultons' own used car lot. There were no clues pointing to Cathy's whereabouts. After Thanksgiving, the Moultons received word from state police that a girl resembling Cathy was living in a small town more than 4 hours north of Portland. Roy and Claire drove up and learned the sheriff's department knew nothing about Cathy's disappearance. The police eventually discovered that the girl they thought was Cathy was in fact a girl who had disappeared from her home in Connecticut. The girl returned home, and so did the Moultons. Alex Tanous, a psychic, offered his services to the Moultons for free. Roy and Alex drove around Portland, and Alex received a sense that Cathy got into a car and drove straight out Forest Avenue. While this information provided a clue not before known, it brought the Moultons no closer to finding their daughter. For the next 2 years, the Moultons always left the front door unlocked and remained within earshot of the phone. Mr. and Miss Moulton rarely left the house together, one always waiting at home in anticipation for Cathy's return. Claire spent much of her time seated beside the upstairs window where she could watch up and down the street searching for her daughter. Cathy's story brought little publicity outside of 2 local newspapers running her photo. The Moultons got in touch with the FBI, and although they couldn't start an official investigation without evidence of an abduction, they were able to get Cathy more publicity by airing her photo at the end of several episodes of the show FBI. 17 years after Cathy went missing, a Portland detective visited the Moulton family at their home and first offered the Moultons a sincere apology for the lack of assistance they received from the Portland Police Department. He then explained to the Moultons that the body of a young girl was found in British Columbia that could be Cathy. The detective asked for a copy of her dental records, which the Moultons provided, but it did not match the girl. Cathy's dental records were eventually used to eliminate hundreds of unidentified female bodies, as her records were unique since she had her canines removed prior to getting braces. The case went cold until 1995. In 1995, now retired detective Kevin Caddy was handed Cathy's cold case file. The file contained few pages. Among them, the missing persons report with little detail, nothing else. Detective Caddy soon learned that Nancy Barlow, Cathy's best friend at the time she went missing, was never interviewed. No reason was given for why she wasn't questioned. If she had been, the Moulton family could have received answers a long time ago. Detective Caddy was able to track down Nancy and learn more about Cathy. Like most teenagers, Cathy was beginning to assert her independence. She did a little rebelling, like sneaking cigarettes and drinking, but nothing out of the ordinary for your average teen. Detective Caddy also found out about a 22-year-old man named Lester Everett, whom Cathy had been dating. Some witnesses had seen Cathy getting into a blue car with 2 older boys on the day of her disappearance. Lester had stolen a woman's blue 4-door Cadillac and picked up another man, Ronald Purley, and offered to drive him just over the Canadian border. A garage employee at Fort Fairfield, Maine, remembered seeing Cathy, Lester, and Ronald when they came into the garage to buy new tires for the Cadillac. The employee said Ronald appeared to be controlling Cathy's movements, even walking her to and from the bathroom with his hand on the back of her neck. Across the Canadian border, witnesses saw Lester and Cathy for a few days in September 1971 before the pair went to McBride's farm in Mars Hill, Maine to harvest potatoes. While at the farm, one witness said Cathy was using the first name Candy and that she cried often, saying she wanted to go home. Cathy seemed fearful of the other men working on the farm. One night, Lester and Cathy left the farm, and Lester returned the next morning alone. He said he dropped Cathy off at another camp. In fact, he brought her back across the Canadian border and left her with Ronald. At the end of the potato harvest, Lester and a few others left for Florida to pick oranges. He never returned to Maine and said he did not know what happened to Cathy. He died of cancer in the mid-1980s at the age of 35. It became apparent that the blue Cadillac that witnesses saw Cathy get into the day she went missing in late September was indeed the Cadillac stolen by Lester Everett. Detectives reached out to Ronald's sister, Jacqueline. Cathy stayed in Jacqueline's home for approximately a month between Halloween and Thanksgiving of 1971. Jacqueline and others on the reservation believed that Cathy was Ronald's girlfriend and that her name was Candy. According to Jacqueline, during her month's stay, Cathy was seen in the company of a neighbor and relative, Ivan Purley, who lived with Ronald's parents. Ivan was known around the reservation as Ivan the Rapist. Jacqueline recalled hearing of Cathy running from Ivan's home naked during the height of a blizzard. Jacqueline never saw her again after that snowstorm. Authorities received tips that Cathy's body was either buried in the basement of Ronald's home or in a nearby trail. Ronald, who has served time for rape and home invasion, refused to cooperate with police even when he was offered immunity from prosecution if he would provide details as to what happened to Cathy. Investigators never had enough evidence to file charges against anyone or get warrants to search Ronald's home. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Cathy's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media, and join me next week as I dive into another case.